I just want you to pause for a second and think, when have I seen God at work? Just stop and think for a second. When have I seen God at work? Hopefully, it's every day. Hopefully, it's every moment. Sometimes we think, oh, he did something over there. While that was going on, he was probably doing something inside of you at the exact same time. God has power that is unbelievable. Over the last several weeks, we've been talking about things like he has power over darkness. He has power over Satan. He has power over nature. He has power over, and we just went through this list over and over and over again. And when we capture that incredible power, we realize this: it's all at exactly the same time. There's nothing out of his control. Absolutely amazing thought. And that causes me to want to know him. I hope that causes you to say, I want to know that. I want to know him. How can I know him? Can I understand him? It's not just knowing a bunch of facts. Anybody here ever seen somebody in elementary school and go, they're cute? I'm going to memorize their phone number. That's different from knowing them. That's knowing their phone number. I know exactly how many steps they take when they get up and walk out of the room. I know everything about them. No. You don't, but you don't know them. And that's really what this is all about, this little series that we've been doing about understanding that this God, the God of the universe, who has all this power, is somebody that you and I can know. Not just know about, but know. Would you say our mission statement with us, okay? Would you say our mission statement with us? To know and love God, to know and love people, and to bring the two together through Jesus Christ. Real quick, I was at a wedding yesterday, and what we saw and what we heard was the redemption of 20 years of basically hell in two people's lives. And they admitted they were conscientiously admitting the fact that they've been wandering from what was best, wandering from what God wanted. But they have come to an understanding of knowledge, of desire to know God, and that came together through what Jesus Christ had done. Absolutely amazing thought. As we've been looking at some of these different powers that are demonstrated in the scriptures, we're reminded of the fact that, you know what, if all these things were written down, it'd be a lot of books. Let's read that together. Let's read this theme verse together. Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them had been written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have enough room for the books that would be written. Absolutely amazing. Well, today we're going to take a look at power over evil, and there's several stories about him having power over evil. But I love this one because it ends with a couple thousand pigs crashing into the ground and dying, and it's like, oh, cool, bacon fest. You know what I mean? So let's take a look at this. This is from Mark chapter 5. This is in a couple of other gospels as well. But in Mark chapter 5, it says this. It says, they went across the lake to the region of Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of a boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the chains on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God you won't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on this hillside nearby. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When the people came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. When it says they were afraid, referring to the people that saw this drastically changed human being. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. When the people began to plead with Jesus to leave, their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy upon you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Wow. Amen. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing unto you today. And may we enjoy capturing the truths of Scripture. Amen. This man has this man in total darkness. These are some key thoughts that are in this little section. An evil spirit from the tombs. He lived in the tombs. No one could bind him, not even a chain. He'd been chained over and over, apparently, but they broke and no one could subdue him. He would cry out night and day. He would cut himself with stones. What a challenging isolation and personal torment that must be. Absolutely awful. The basic point is this: no one can help him. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought, no one can help me? Have you? Have you ever been absolutely petrified? Have you ever been in the middle of the night staying in somebody's house sitting, and the sheets are stuck underneath you and you can't roll, and all of a sudden you hear a drop in a downspout that hits the bottom, and you think a gun is going off and it's shooting, and about that time a bird hits the window and you're wondering if they're shooting at you and you can't move, and you're like, the guy's got a hold of me, the guy's got a hold. That's what it was like for me one night, and I thought, no one can help me right now. Pre-cell phones, absolutely petrified. Oh man, I get nervous thinking about that again, okay? What is life like when no one can help you? He basically is out of control. And you know what? This passage goes on to say this. For in the book of Luke, it says, for a long time he had no clothes on. That's just embarrassing for people. It's embarrassing for him. He is completely out of control. And one of the points that needs to be made here is this, is that Satan robs people of sanity. He robs people of self-control. He strips us of dignity. He condemns people to suffering. And when this man is out of control, and when we're out of control, there's a restraint that needs to take place. There's not just a restraint that needs to take place, but there's a truth that is necessary, and that truth is that God is alive and well, and society is not very helpful to all of these situations. Why do I say this? Because there are self-help programs that just do not work. They don't. Self-help programs take care of an immediate feeling. One of the things that I love about the Gospel Rescue Mission, and this has already been said. You know what? You're looking for a place to celebrate a sunrise service? Go there. There's a whole lot of people that would love to see you. Just support those people and just say hi to everybody you see, and you will make their day. But that's a place where Jesus Christ is changing lives. It's changing them for eternity. And it's a reminder to me of this great thing of these people, their testimonies. If you ever go to one of their graduations, you begin to understand they were in total darkness. They were. You and I are thinking, some of you are probably thinking, I can't really relate to that right now. I can't relate to being naked in public. I can't relate to not having my clothes on, to needing to be tied up and what it would be like to be in chains and what it would be like to live alone and to live among the tombs and to basically be homeless. But let's pause here for a second. Because the ruler of darkness has more control than we would ever imagine. Because we compare to other people's situation instead of comparing to what the glory of God has for us. You see, there are dark forces all around the world. And the evil and revengeful thoughts that are among men is absolutely awful. There's passionate selfishness among society. There's sinful desires. There's greed. There's lying. There's cheating. There's stealing. There's envy. There's getting even. And there's other pleasures that are absolutely real. And when we compare ourselves to perfection, we begin to realize we are lost. We're lost. Ephesians 6:12 puts it this way: for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. It is real. I'm driving home last night, and we're driving by a place that's near our home, and there's a whole bunch of people that are choosing to live in this place that I'd rather not have them live. And I'm thinking, why are they living there? And the bottom line is, after doing a lot of research with different things, you know why they're living there? It's not because they don't have anywhere to live, because they do not want to be under the control of the law. They have no desire to have the law control them. And it's a reminder to me, am I choosing to live under the auspices of what Jesus Christ says? Or do I just want to be run rampant and be a person of evil? I think Ephesians 2 explains really well about this battle, where it says this: as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and in the sins in which you used to live. Notice it says used to live, when you followed the ways of the world. Like all of you here in this room, you know what? There are times where the world looks appealing. It simply does. And we all have the same problem, and that problem is this: our life is desperate without Jesus Christ. This man's life was desperate because of his situation, and we have a good picture of that. But in comparison to perfection, how far away from perfection do you have to be to not be perfect? Oh, not very, huh? Not very. Let me make this picture clear to you, okay? Best I can, okay? Often we think that people who have good jobs have no problems. I'm serious. There used to be a saying in AA that went like this: just because the man has a three-piece suit doesn't mean that he's not an alcoholic. There's a whole lot of people that are what we call functioning under evil. Just because you got a steady job and because your house is tidy doesn't mean you don't have an alcohol problem, that they don't cheat on their wife, that they don't have a gambling problem, they don't have a drug problem. They just have learned to cover it up well. This man in the story didn't know how to cover it up. Just because we have clothes on doesn't mean everything's okay. Just because we aren't screaming with our voices and coming out of a tomb doesn't mean that everything's okay. There's a war of evil that is attacking us, and we get satisfied with less evil instead of purification. Many people like it when Jesus is doing what they want. Many people don't like the idea of going to hell. Many people enjoy church because they like the music and people are nice. I have many friends who think I got to be good enough to go to heaven. I have many friends who think that if they do more good than bad, they're going to go to heaven. Many know that something from personal experience is this: I need an encounter with the light of the world. Let me give you an idea of how powerful light is, okay? Let me give you an idea of how powerful light is. Have you ever been camping? I say this, but camping is a great example because a lot of times there's stars in the sky, okay? Have you ever wondered if you could see your hand inside of a sleeping bag? That's dark. Like you're, okay? Now imagine it being that dark and somebody just lighting a match. Your pupils go like this. Okay? Got the idea? Anybody here ever been in an igloo? If you light a candle in an igloo, it is too bright. I'm just giving you a comparison of light and darkness. Okay? Anybody ever taken a flashlight and shined it in somebody's eyes when it was dark and they said, "Oh, thank you"? No, you go, "Oh," because the light is so powerful. And the light of Jesus Christ, the encounter of Jesus Christ, wins over darkness every single time. It wins over evil. This man in verse 6 has an encounter with Jesus. He has an encounter with the light of the world. It says this, it says, when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell at his feet in front of him. He didn't say, "Oh, there he is over there." There he is. No, he ran to the light. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of God of the Most High? Swear to God you won't torture me." You see, the torture is this. He knows there's going to be a battle with light. He knows that the light is probably going to be painful, and then it will be relieving. But he's afraid of the light because he's so used to the darkness. He's so used to the darkness that he's afraid of the light. Let's remember something. Jesus' voice calmed the sea. Remember that? Jesus' voice could calm the sky. This man knows the power of Christ, but he's almost rejecting the power of Christ because he says, "Don't torture me." You've probably heard stories about little boys, little girls who go to the doctor and they got to get a shot. "Don't hurt me." Why are they saying "don't hurt me"? Because they're afraid of what? They're afraid of the poke. There's a little boy who was afraid of the poke and they were telling him, "Hey, without the poke you won't live. We have to hurt you to save you." And it took him a while to understand, and finally he said, "Doctor, would you hurt me?" This is exactly the same concept here. Swear to God you won't torture me. He knows with complete certainty that Jesus can release his condition and end torture, but he's saying, "I fear that change." Are there people here today who are saying, "I don't want to follow Christ because I don't want the torture of change that there's going to be. I don't want the torture of change that there's going to be. I just like living in a little bit of sin." That's the truth. I'm going to come back to the rescue mission. There is a very high success level rate there about people's lives being transformed. But the reality is this: as their life gets transformed, they got to develop a new habit, and that new habit has to be, "I want the light all the time." And as they want the light all the time, sometimes it's a struggle because they're so used to giving in to sin, they're so used to giving into the temptation that, "Hey, the darkness is familiar to me." But this man says to Jesus, "What do you want with me? He's basically saying, are you going to give me additional pain? You see, Jesus is going to release him, and he's going to give him a peace that surpasses all understanding, because that's what Jesus does. But without Jesus, this man is trapped, and he's going to go through a painful experience here of getting used to something that is new. And we fear turning our lives over to Christ. A lot of us have prayed the prayer. We've raised our hand at the right time. But do I want to live in absolute godliness issue and have Jesus Christ be the Savior and Lord of my life all the time? Without Jesus, this man is trapped because no one can help him. And with Jesus, there's probably going to be a new challenge. Absolute true story. I was 19 years old and I worked at a place called Holt Brothers in Stockton. Okay, one of the little places there is one of the places that they have is called the Engine Power Company. They build engines that create energy. And I worked with this guy named Art, and Art says to me the first day, he says, "So I understand you're a believer." I said, "A believer in what?" I'm just going to play games with him a little bit, okay? That's what guys do who work in those kind of places. And I said, "Believer in what?" He goes, "You know what I mean." And I said, "What, a believer in the fact that I like pepperoni pizza or what?" And he goes, "No, you know God. You know, the boss already told me." We got into a conversation almost every day. And finally I said to him, "Art," I said, "Are you a believer?" And he goes, "No way." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because I'd have to change everything in my life." He goes, "But I promise you this, John." He says, "I know exactly what I need to do the moment before I die." No joke. No joke. We had this conversation like 5 times. Finally I said, "Art," I said, I just went for broke. Okay, I said, "Art, what if you decided to commit suicide and forgot?" He said, "I'd have time to decide." I said, "Art, what if you got hit by a car driving along?" He goes, "John," he goes, "I have no desire to change. I just want to go to heaven." Did you capture that? I have no desire to change. I just want to go to heaven. Art committed suicide. Not that, about 2 or 3 years later, the boss, the man who was our boss, the foreman in the area, he called me, he said, "John," he goes, "I just want you to know," he goes, I'm so grateful that you talked to Art about the gospel." He goes, "Because, and you told me about those conversations." He said, "Because of your conversations with him, I had a chance to share Christ with several guys in the building who asked, 'Where's Art now?'" He goes, "And I told them about your conversations. And I shared with them about the love of Jesus Christ and our love for him, not just knowing the answers to some things." You know, his response was basically, "I don't want to be tortured. I don't want to be, I just want to live in what I'm living in." His response was, "I don't want to live giving up the way that I live. I just want to go to heaven." But Jesus says in Luke 9:23, he really, and he makes this incredible statement that has everything to do with this man's journey. It's this: "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." If we're going to get rid, if the evil is going to be departed from us, we really have to say, "I'm dropping everything that's important. I'm following the light. I'm following the light." Why? Because God's grace changes us. R.C. Sproul said this: "A profession of faith doesn't justify anybody. The possession of faith is what justifies." It's not just words. Anybody here ever given lip service to somebody? Isn't that fun? We think we're pulling the wool over their eyes. That's why we do it, because we love deceiving. Let me focus on a great lesson here, okay? This is about the pigs and the demons, okay? I think that there's 4 great lessons that we can learn from the pigs and the demons. The first one is this: the demons did what demons do. All the demons were doing is what they regularly do. They destroy. They destroyed the pigs. The purpose of fallen angels is destruction. Some people think, how did demons become demons? Well, basically they were created as angels, and they followed they followed the evil one, and they became administrators of evil, and that's what they do. That's all they do. They don't do good. Everything is a deception. Here's a second thought, okay? The demons know the power of Jesus. The demons know the power. They begged and pleaded with Jesus. They knew the sovereignty that he had. He knew the sovereignty over them that he had. There's no doubt about the power of God in their beings, okay? None whatsoever. Here's a third great little picture from this, okay? This picture of the pigs going over the cliff is an undeniable picture about the power of Jesus. If you were there, you would never forget seeing that. There's some things you just never, ever forget. You never forget. And to watch these pigs go, I mean, I don't know how fast. I don't know if they all jumped at once. I don't know if they just You get the idea? We don't know. But all I know is it's picturesque, and it's a picturesque of the ultimate power that Jesus had when he cast this out. Where this evil was no longer, and where this evil went was being destroyed. What an incredible picture. And here's the last one. The value of you and I is worth more than 2,000 pigs. Every person deserves to hear the message of Jesus. Every culture deserves to hear the message of Jesus. And no matter how dark the evil, light will win. And people are simply more important than animals. That's why we give as a church very generously to missionaries all over the world. That's why we are going to support the Samsons in a little bit. That's why a couple of people in June are going to go and find out about some churches that are being planted all over Eastern Europe. How many of you guys remember somebody named Pastor Saul? Pastor Saul is a part of a work in Eastern Europe where basically the devalued thought of evangelism is gone. And they have these guys that they're referring to as next generation pastors. How do you relate to the young people? How do you communicate to the young people? And they're planting several churches in Eastern Europe. It's absolutely phenomenal to hear and to see what is going on. And we want to support Saul in this. It's part of our denomination is creating this opportunity, and we just want to be supported. And it's really that response that these same people, hey, come and see what God is doing. Come and support what God is doing. Come and celebrate what God is doing, because the work of God is not just on your block. It's not just here in this building. There's an incredible testimony. But here's the response. This response is phenomenal that's going on here. There was a man sitting there who had never sat before. There was a man dressed who had not been dressed before. And there was a man in his right mind. You know what? That's the power of God.